This relatively small image is going to take a very important role in art history. Of course, I'm talking about Giovanni Arnolfini. Now, this painting by Van Eyck is going to show us a few things. First of all, it gives us this idea of emerging capitalism, which led to a burgeoning private art market. Here, Van Eyck has depicted the Lucca financier with ties to the Medici, Giovanni Arnolfini, in a bedchamber, both mundane and highly spiritual. Almost every object in this room symbolizes the sanctity of marriage. It's really a marriage painting, and it's doing some of the same things that we see in Italy from the Primavera or from Mantegna. So let's dig into this a little bit. So here the couple is taking their wedding vows. And before we jump into the piece, I want to point out marriage until the Victorian period, the late 19th century, is generally a very private affair. You wouldn't have big lavish parties or anything like that. Generally, you would get married at a chapel. You'd have a couple of witnesses. That's about it. You might have a bit of a party afterwards. But marriage is a business transaction more than anything else. And the big party, well, that's expensive and people don't have those kind of resources. So frequently, even people as well off as Giovanni Arnolfini will get married, for example, in their bedroom or in a room in their house. The priest will come to them. So this idea of massive marriages, it's a very new one. It's people trying to stay with royalty, and royal trends in the late 19th century has nothing to do with most of human history. Now, the setting is going to be temporarily holy ground. After all, we see the shoes cast aside. Both his shoes, those wooden, almost clog-like shoes here, and hers, which are further in the background. You need to do this because you don't wear shoes in holy spaces. It also tells us that the wedding vows either have just happened or are happening as we're watching. So it gives us a sense of time. We also have the dog. Now, the dog is always a symbol of fidelity in painting, in art. And in this case, the fidelity of wife to husband. Mind you, I didn't say husband to wife because that one's kind of understood not to happen all that often. But it does become important. And one other detail I want to point out, with oil paints, Van Eyck can sit there and draw out the details of that dog, all of the individual hairs and elements. You can almost reach out and pet him and know what he's going to feel like, know what he's going to be like. Behind them, the curtain to the marriage bed has been opened. This means that they have just said their vows. As the vows would be said, suddenly they can make use of the bedchamber, which means they've been married, they need to now consummate the marriage. And this is important because even though, as we've discussed before with the Primavera in Italy, men and women in the Renaissance are no more innocent than they are today, they need to at least give that impression. And so that's what they're doing, or at least that's what Van Eyck is doing in the painting by opening the bedchamber and making it apparent that that's what has just happened. The broom behind her, and it's a little hard to see, it's right here if you're not paying attention. The broom indicates domestic care. In other words, it is her role to maintain the house. This does not mean that she will be cleaning. This is an upper middle class home. More than likely, she will have slaves or servants to do so. But she will be responsible for taking care of all of that, to basically manage the day-to-day affairs of the house. The oranges that we see next to him are actually there possibly to indicate fertility, but more than likely to indicate his connection to the Medici. He's employed by them, which is a little odd. I mean, you couldn't imagine working for GE and getting your wedding photos in front of a giant jet engine. But yet that's what he's doing. And remember, they live in a time where social connection is everything. And so you want to flaunt those social connections. You can't make it really obvious. You can't write something like, hey, I work for the Medici, I'm really close to them. But what you can do is indicate it in these subtle ways. And if you happen to know the code, you know what oranges mean, you can pick up on it. If you don't know the code, it just looks like something that's a symbol of good fortune or fertility or any number of other things. So let's look at that mirror. Now, the medallions in the mirror are actually the stations of the cross, basically the passion of Jesus, his crucifixion, death, and resurrection, depicted in these tiny medallions in this tiny painting over here. So it gives you a sense of incredible detail. It also gives you a sense of the mirror, which I want to highlight here, because what you're actually seeing is the back of the couple. Fine, makes sense. Not 100% accurate. After all, their hands don't seem to be touching here, that sort of thing. But then we see who we can assume is the priest in blue, and then we can see who we assume is going to be Van Eyck. And all of this is done with incredible detail. Look at the distortion that's happening from the mirror into the space. That's something you would only see if you have the mirror and you can study what's going on in the room through the mirror. It's really remarkable what Van Eyck is doing. Now, I also want to point out where these people are standing. The woman is well inside the room beside the bed. This symbolizes her role in the marriage, where she needs to make herself available, she's responsible for the domestic space, and she's responsible for reproduction. He, on the other hand, is next to the window, indicating his role in the marriage is in the outside world, in the world of business. He is to provide, to bring in money, not to focus on domestic affairs. This is giving us a sense of the roles of people in marriage at the time. Now, the artist painting himself in the mirror is revealing. He's self-conscious as a professional. He believes that he needs to be more, because artists at the time in Northern Europe are kind of like plumbers or electricians today. You don't expect your plumber to sign your pipes. Van Eyck doesn't like that. He wants to be better known. And so this word, this writing on the back is actually, well, his signature. You could imagine your wedding photographer going through and signing the middle of all your wedding photos with a digital watermark, or worse, a Sharpie. But yet that's exactly what Van Eyck has done. He's trying to elevate his status, and he's hoping that visitors to Giovanni Arnolfini's home will see his name there and commission him, bring him more business. Now, there's one other thing I want to bring up, which isn't just the signature, but the chandelier. This chandelier is really complex. I mean, it doesn't look like it. These are flat pieces of metal cut into decorative forms with a round piece and a candle and that sort of thing. So why do I bring it up? Well, think about it this way. If you're an artist, how long can you have this couple stand in this room? More to the point, it's someone's bedroom. How long can you really stand there and study the room? This chandelier, amongst other things, is used as evidence that Vermeer may be using a camera obscura, something we'll be dealing with, Van Eyck is using a camera obscura, something we will deal with later when we talk about Vermeer, because the complex forms don't lend themselves to someone sitting down and simply sketching. And you sit and you say, well, that seems like cheating, that seems problematic, but really it's not. After all, an artist is being paid a flat fee, say, hypothetically, $100 for a painting. The less time they spend sketching, the more time they spend painting, the more money they make per hour. It makes perfect sense. So when we look at this piece, what we are getting from it is this idea of marriage and this idea of social status. One other thing I want to bring up, because everyone asks, well, the question is she pregnant? Because of the way her belly seems to come out here. And the answer is no, I can definitely tell you not. Because if she were, you would never paint her this way. What you would do is ask the artist to cut that down. In fact, what you're looking at is a fashion, just like her high shaven forehead and strange horns of hair on her head. We see high fashion here. This heavy wool dress is being pulled up and being held in front of her. And that gives the sense that she's pregnant, but in fact, she's not. After all, this is art. You can simply ask the artist, hey, could you get rid of the pregnancy in the painting? And given his social status, he would have done it if that were a problem. So this is fashion, not pregnancy.